Now, this week, he got some bad news because he got fired he resigned. His official term is he resigned from the Frontier Services Group. This is the company he founded and which the Chinese basically back him. Billions of dollars have been fed into his organization. And they do all sorts of really shady stuff around the world. One of the things they do is resources in Africa, flying things and resources and security in Africa. But they also do some of the Uyghur camps, concentration camp builds. So they're really fine people. And they're normally okay with most things, it seems like, at the FSG, except this week something turned sour and off Erik Prince went into the sunset. So this is the timeline of events. March 8th, the United Nations panel releases a report about what they were investigating, which is a giant attempt to overthrow the United Nations government in Libya and replace them with a warlord called Khalifa Haftar. And then on March 10th, the current CEO of FSG resigns. That's 2 days after the UN panel releases their report. And then on April 13th, just the other day, Erik Prince resigns. Now, all of this might not seem connected, except it really is when you start reading the report, and it gets really, really fascinating because, Erik Prince has two bosses. These are his two bosses. There's Chang Xingming, who's the chair of the Frontier Services Group, who's a very good friend of President Xi. And on the other side, on his other shoulder, Mohammed bin Zayed, the Crown Prince of the UAE. And basically, he does services for both of these leaders in most of these countries at the same time. Now, in this particular instance, as he headed into Libya, well, he didn't head into Libya. His mercenaries headed into Libya. He went there on behalf of the Crown Prince. The Prince of the UAE decides that he wants to overthrow the government in Libya because, of course, they want the oil, and they've always wanted the oil. And so Khalifa Haftar is the warlord that's backed by Russia and backed by the UAE. And they thought, well, they'll just send their mercenaries in to support an overthrow of the Libyan government by Haftar, and they'll install Haftar as the leader, and then they'll have control of all the oil and solve all these problems that they might be having in Libya. So they call Erik Prince. Erik Prince calls his buddy, Christian Durant, you're missing the CH. He's a mercenary. I think he's from South Africa or somewhere around there. And he and Erik Prince do all sorts of clandestine things together, sort of as a side team. They don't do it directly for either of these companies when they do their things. But when it came to Libya, it was Lancaster 6 that they ended up hiring to do the attempted overthrow of the UN government in Libya. And that's where we pick up the story. So Greg Smith, who many of you have met on the show before, you two certainly have, was interviewed by me and Eric when Eric Garland was still on the show. Was Erik Prince involved in this thing?
It's not plausible that Erik Prince doesn't control Lancaster 6. He's going to claim he doesn't. His attorneys, Vince Gordon in the UAE, is going to claim he doesn't. His attorneys here in the US will claim he has nothing to do with it. But what Erik does is pretty simple. He takes a company. You have to ask three questions. The first question is, Erik, do you own that business? And he'll say, no, I don't own it. Okay, so you don't own the equity of it. Erik, do you have any financial interest in that company? I.e., do you own all the debt? Do they owe you a bunch of money? So even though you don't own the equity, do you control it? And he'll say, no, I don't own, I don't have that either. Okay, so then the third question that a smart investigator needs to ask is, have you gained any type of benefit?
And as it turns out, maybe he was gaining some benefits, because when you look at the actual report, it goes into great detail about one specific plane. They had this military plane, and it looks like this. And so it was owned at the time of the attempted overthrow of the Libyan government by the Frontier Services Group, the same group that Erik Prince works for in China, which means here's the Chinese government discovering that one of the planes associated with them is involved in an attempted coup in Libya. And there it is in black and white all the way through the United Nations panel report, which cites Prince and Durant and everybody else for breaking the embargo that they have against any arms entering Libya. So clearly Erik Prince and company are in deep, deep trouble there. Prince might actually be sanctioned to a tremendous amount over this. And in the report, they go through a lot of detail about how this plane hadn't transferred ownership until well after the event on July 22nd, when in fact it was being operated in June, when it was still owned by FSG. And
oops.
Oops is exactly right. Now, they also very nicely quoted in the report of Greg talking on the show, one of the quotes you heard there. And I was just interested by the fact that we titled the whole thing "Bankrolled by Beijing," which wasn't at all what they would have been investigating, but it was because we did two stories. We did a story about Erik Prince being bankrolled by Beijing, and then we did a story about him being involved in Libya, but it was all under the headline of "Bankrolled by Beijing." This is Prince's resignation note, or leaving the company note, and then over here, which you can't really read now, is the former CEO who resigned on March 8th. So again, to show you the way this all lined up, on March 8th, the final UN panel releases their report. March 10th, the CEO resigns 2 days afterwards. So you can see how there's a very likely connection there. And then on April 13th, Erik Prince finally is forced to leave his company that he's been with for a very long time and has been funded to the tune of billions of dollars by the Chinese government. And Erik Prince is forced to resign. And that is how Erik Prince had a very, very bad week. And this is before he even faces sanctions from the United Nations, finding him guilty of breaking that embargo. So it's actually kind of big news because Erik Prince needs that company and he needs their money for sure.
Did you show the thing that you're mentioned in the UN report? Or?
I didn't show the actual paragraph. I just spoke about it, but it is in there. It's very nice.
I just want to say, that's really cool, Zev.
I was actually pretty pleased about that too. I was all the things that I would like to have happened in the last 4 years. Maybe Erik Prince leaving his job would have been among the highest. So, it's not bad to be somehow involved in that. And Greg has been very forthcoming with a lot of information. So I'm glad they cited us, and I'm glad he's out of his job because they were doing a lot of bad things. Now we might find out less about what they're doing, but when it comes to the concentration camps in the Uyghur region, it's not, it's kind of untenable what he's been up to.
He's unbelievable scumbag, but it's like epic, and he still can't. Even those pictures you're showing, he can't make his clothes fit him right. I know that feels so petty, but something's going on with that person, that human being, that's off, really off. So I don't trust that even though he's officially out of Frontier, that there isn't some shadow company that it all got transferred over into. Let's find that out. That's what this guy does. He does do shell games with his companies and Mr. Logistics, or are you a mercenary, or are you shipping goods? And it's all this mess. I also am curious whether, because of the UN report and because we do have a very different treasury, head of the treasury now, and a very different administration in that, whether something kind of trickled over to China of like, look, something's going on here with us and this guy, Erik Prince. You might not want to be
stuck in the middle of. Yeah, I'm sure that's what happens.
You might just give you a little heads up about this guy, Erik Prince. I wonder if, I don't know.
There's probably a very long list of things that the Beijing and Washington have to talk about. The last thing they want is another thing on top of it. To now deal with Erik Prince in Libya is not really their core business. So I'm sure they have other issues that rather tread on. So for sure, I think that would have happened diplomatically.
Does he still live in UAE?
He still lives in UAE, and he still
didn't Biden announce this week that they were going to go through with the arms thing.
Oh, really? That's interesting.
And I wonder, that's also something to think about.
It is something interesting. I had not even heard that.
There's no extradition, but we'll give you the arms deal, but
say goodbye to Erik. I don't think Biden has had an official conversation with a UAE crown prince yet. As far as I'm aware, it hasn't happened. I think that guy's the biggest challenge they have. So if they've been able to turn him by giving him the weapons, that's interesting.
He's deep in a lot of stuff, and not just with us, and a history with us, and our allies. He's a tricky guy, so it's going to be interesting how we handle him, as opposed to the Bonsai, the Mohammed Bonsai guy. This is just a gross son of a king who clearly is not all there anymore and very aged, but perhaps he can be replaced, or perhaps he can be put in his place because there is still a king and a monarch. This MBZ is a little trickier.
Yeah, I think MBS is fairly timid actually when it comes right down to it. But MBZ actually has big big aspirations to rule the world through the fist. So they're very different. I think MBZ has MBS under his control, or at least influence. So it'll be really interesting to see what happens. That was good news. That was nice to hear this week.
Yeah.
No one wants to wish anything bad on anyone, but Erik Prince should not be working for the Chinese.
Yeah,
what the hell was he doing working for the Chinese and the Trump campaign at the same time?
Come on.
That's not okay.
Yeah. And also, who decides to overthrow the government in Libya just as their job? Like, I can't even get my kids to take out the trash. He's trying to overthrow a government,
and he does it with these two shitty planes and 5 guys who get stuck on a boat, and then they get stranded, they get sent away. Their cover story sucks. It's just one of these awful stories of mission gone bad, and for what reason?
Yeah. Pathetic and crumpled and ill-fitting and amateurish as his outfits.
Right.
It's not. It's like this is not a master of the universe, right? Something's really off with him. I'm telling you.
He's worth $4 billion. I mean, what would you need all that money for? I mean, it seems insane. You need to go and then run operations.
I think he watched the James Bond movies. The James Bond movies. Holler, and was like, I want to be that villain guy. And he doesn't understand that the villain guy winds up getting thrown into the volcano at the end of the movie,
right?
Or whatever, right? Or sucked out of the airplane, or whatever.
He was also laughed at as a Marine, right? Wasn't he in the Marine Corps for a little bit there? But he wasn't really. He sort of fakes his whole career there, and sort of people laugh at him. He's a bit of a joke in the military world. No one really wants to work with him. So I think he's constantly asserting his manhood somehow through all these little projects that he has, and through his affinities for these rich men. But it's it's really not turning out well. After you should have given up by now. Absolutely.
Yeah.
100%. They have retreats for that kind of thing, I think. Hey, what about Maria Butina? I don't know.
What about her?
I don't know. I was asked to throw up some pictures of Maria Butina, and I'm not sure which Maria are you wanting as a picture here.
I don't know. I felt like we have to. There's so much going on in the news. Mike Pence got a pacemaker installed. I feel like the late night writers are up late trying to come up with a.
You want this Butina, or do you want this Butina?
Any Butina is fine.
Look at this Butina, the sad and forlorn one when she's in prison, or go with the first one.
There's a prison one. No, there's a good prison one that's hardcore. I like the hardcore.
I don't have that one. The only other two I've got is her as Pippi Longstockings. And then
is that Torsion?
That's Torsion on the other side. Let me
leave that one. That's the one we want. I want to talk about. Again, we know that the quarantine is coming to an end, and the way that we know is that the United States is once again mass shooting, making up for lost time with the goddamn mass shootings. And I don't want to make light of this because it's obviously a horrible tragedy, but it's so fucking avoidable, and everybody in the country knows how to avoid part of it, which is banning the damn AR-15s and the assault weapons, right? 90% of Americans want this to happen. So why hasn't it happened? Obama tried. He's not a guy that is emotional, and Obama got emotional trying to make this work and was unable to make it work. The stranglehold that's being placed on this is from the Republican senators especially. That's Mitch McConnell, who won't let them vote on any of these bills. So every time there's a shooting, understand the NRA, which is funded in part by Torsion, infiltrated by Torsion and Maria Butina, these Russian operatives. Alexander Torsion is one of Putin's buddies. He's a guy who, as Aaron Harris explained on the Prevail podcast last week when we talked about Volume 5, Torsion was the Russian politician or minister, or whatever he was, who presided over the sham investigation into the thing that happened in Russia when the Chechen separatists seized the school.
Yeah,
and then the Russian military came in, and then there was a standoff, and then suddenly the Russians were like, fuck it, we're going to kill everybody. And he whitewashed that thing to make it seem like it was the Chechens that were responsible when it was the Russians. Torsion did that. That was Torsion's doing.
Nice guy.
He whitewashed this thing. Then he went to Spain and was laundering money for whatever the Russian crime.
Yeah, Mijas. For Mijas. Yeah, he was. He's a major gangster. It's not a joke, guys. This guy's.
This is who he is. This motherfucker, okay?
Yeah.
Friends with Blackburn, the Tennessee lady, the senator.
Yeah.
Marsha.
Hobnobs with all these people, okay? His friends flew from Russia to wherever it was, I forget where, to hang out with the president of the NRA at his birthday party, stayed for 2 hours, got back in a plane, went back to Russia. That's torsion. That's the influence that they have over the NRA. So every time there's a shooting like this, you have to ask yourself, who wants these weapons on the street? Who wants no regulations on this? It's not normal people. It's not even people, normal rank and file people in the NRA. It is the politicians who are owned by the torsion-influenced, Russian-influenced NRA. That's who it is. It's Mitch McConnell and these NRA people, okay? And who benefits when there's a mass shooting in the United States globally? Putin. That's who benefits. Vladimir Putin benefits because it makes us look like losers, like we can't regulate our own stuff, like we can't get out of our own way. It makes us look weak and inept, and we are not weak and inept.
And violent,
So,
and violent, and hypocritical. Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
So the answer to the shootings, not the police shootings, that's its own thing, which is also horrible and happened this week. But the mass shootings with these assault weapons, Mitch McConnell is responsible. The Republican senators are responsible. So every time there's a shooting, that is more blood on their hands. And I don't know what's got to happen with this filibuster or whatever these fuckheads are with this. But how many goddamn people have to die? Okay? I don't know. But I hope what happens is that they come down, the AG, the new AG, Merrick Garland comes down. All we have to do to get rid of this thing is arrest some senators who are involved with the insurrection. Maybe if we arrest Hawley and we arrest Ted Cruz, then we'll have a little more leeway with these two people, right?
Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I don't know what will happen, but I'm telling you, blue states are more populous. We have more people, a lot more people. We have a lot more money. We're the economic fucking driver of the country and the whole goddamn fucking world. And we can't figure out a way to take power away from this evil minority, as you said before, Zev, criminal organization that has infiltrated one of our two political parties. I don't know what needs to be done, but we have to figure this out.
We have the Senate. What? I'm freaking out. I can't believe. What the fuck? Bring the bills to the floor. What? How is Mitch McConnell still in control? You don't need. You can bring bills to the floor. The Senate Majority Leader can bring bills to.
I don't know. There has to be a solution. There's more of us. There's millions and millions more of us. Okay? These guys they're the slave states. They're the vestiges of the slave states. These guys are Senator Hammond in 1858 or whatever it was, doing the mudsill theory, arguing that the southern states are better because they at least acknowledge that they have slaves and the northern states just keep wage slaves. That's who they are. They're the antecedents, or the, what's the word I'm looking for? The outgrowth of that, the descendants of that. They are fucking evil, and they're allowing this to happen. And I don't know what needs to happen to do it. I don't know if we need to.
Right. Here's the big narrative that ties it all back to the beginning of where this show started. Okay, look at Georgia. The Republican Party is very clear now and very forthright with the fact that it is done with representative democracy. It's done with it. It doesn't believe it doesn't want it anymore. It knows, it fears the changing demographics. They're saying it out loud now. They're starting their own white supremacist groups and committees, and that you have, their propagandists keep pushing for this. They're just going all in on, we've got to get rid of democracy. That's their thing. They're trying to end democracy because they know they're a dead, dying party in terms of representative democracy, in terms of voting public. They know this. They see that. You had 20 years ago, or 15 years ago at least, we had, what was his name? Bill O'Reilly, and you had Rush Limbaugh pushing, because they could see the demographic change, and they were like going all in on that, and fear mongering and doing all this. And now we have today state legislatures going in and saying, if we don't like in Republican states saying, passing election laws that basically say if we don't like the way that the voters voted, that the state legislature has the right to throw it all out and just choose who's going to be, right? To do this thing that Donald Trump was on the phone with the Georgia, and on the phone, I think we'll find out with Pennsylvania, muscling people's like, just find the votes you need, or just throw those votes out. It's all this whole thing. They're done with it. They're done with it. That's what the insurrection was. They are fucking done with democracy. The Republicans are. It is in their way now of their power. So they want it gone. That's why they installed a Kremlin asset as a fucking president in 2016. They could have stopped that. They could have. They knew who he was.
They wanted that. That's what they did. That's what they were in favor of that.
They installed him.
The thing
because
is,
they want it to end.
The left can do the same stuff. They just choose not to. I mean, at the end of the day, there's a inherent respect. I don't know what it is. It's not respect, but we sort of accept that they somehow have a position of authority in this country. All these, racist Republicans, somehow they have authority because, I don't know, they said they were here first. The reality of it is, everyone has an equal vote. And if Democrats wanted to start infringing on white people's rights to vote, and then they could do the same thing, or certainly of right-wingers' right to vote, they could do the same thing. We just choose not to because we sort of believe that there's an acceptable way, acceptable path, an acceptable rule of law, and a constitution we want to follow. But we don't have to do that. But there is a deference that we provide them, which sort of lets them get away with this crap. Like, they shouldn't be allowed to get away with this. They shouldn't be allowed to get away with Georgia. They shouldn't be allowed to get away with the insurrection. They shouldn't be allowed to, but they're going to get away with all of it.
Okay, so that's the key, not doing the dirty planning, right? The key is if we don't, with this new administration and with this new leadership in the Justice Department, if there is no either will for the laws of our nation and priority of the laws of our nation, that no one's above the law, and there's no political will coming out of the administration or in the Congress or the Senate for those elected Democratic leaders, chicken the fuck out and pressure and say, no, we can't go. You can't arrest Holly, right? Or we can't prosecute these crimes, or you can't prosecute a former president for, let's even talk about the COVID deaths, right? That we cannot bring these criminals to account, even though we have the gun, the bullet, the body, that we have all the evidence and all the crime, that somehow that it's a political thing, and not a justice thing, and that and we behave that way as a nation. Our leadership now does not have the courage to bring these fucking criminals to justice for what they're doing. Then that is the ceding of our democracy. That means that's the giving up of it. It really, and if the people in power can't understand that those are the stakes, that those are the real stakes. We are not through this. We are not through the eye of the needle of this yet. If this party, this Republican Party, as it is right now, not looking back and being nostalgic about it, but for what it is right now in this moment, this fascistic party that's authoritarian, that wants to do away with democracy, that's trying to dismantle it, that's literally trying to write laws on a state level to throw out the votes of Black Americans. That's what they're doing. Let's not dance around this, right? They're going back. Mm-hmm. They're going back into the days where it's like women and Black, it's like they're going for it. They're going regressive in that way. If that party is allowed to gain back its power in the House and the Senate and have its majority, it is game over. I'm not trying to be catastrophic and Debbie whatever.
For a while, it would be game over. There's no doubt about it.
We have to fight. We have to keep getting in there. We have to win these elections, and we have to pressure our leadership to actually prosecute these individuals and this party for the crimes that they committed against us for almost 5 years.
You know what would be really popular amongst the most Americans is if the Democrats became the law and order party. And if they insisted that law and order be inflicted on these criminal and Republican Party leaders. Because that's really what needs to happen. There's no one standing up for law and order anymore. Nobody's doing it. And we really need Democrats to start doing it. And it will be a very popular position for centrist Americans who care about real law and order, not the kind that might be meted out by the police in these terrible ways.
Law, you can say
rule
that.
of law. Rule of law is a better way of saying it. We really need someone to stand up for that. And all Americans are in favor of that. Most Americans are in favor of that. And we've allowed this criminal party to just sort of, take control of so many of our states to the point where they're holding everyone else hostage.
Yeah.
Just a quick point. It's now 8:07 p.m., April 16th, 2021. And I look forward to joining you guys on April 16th in 2026 when Rachel Maddow announces live on air that the Republican Party is actually working to undermine democracy. I'm really excited for this. Fucking catch up, media.
I'll be there.
I know.
They're better than most, so you can't really take hits on them. But
they're better than most. I took my hit. I took my swing tonight. I do, but it is important to kind of understand the corporatization of news is not working for democracy. And it's not even a passive, irrelevant thing. It's actually part of the attack on democracy. And
why do you think those networks are worth so much? Why do you think so many investors buy those networks? They're worth it because they have a lot of influence and they can put up whatever they want in the sub-hour news and in the morning news. And that's what they are able to wield against Americans.
And it's really important for everyone to grasp that news, when it comes to cable and when it comes to broadcast, that those are entertainment companies. I know that the journalists on it, they would consider this so offensive that I'm saying this, but they are underneath the entertainment studios, which are underneath the bigger corporate overlords. So they are part, in all cases, they are part of content. Mm-hmm. They are content deliverers. They have agents that are the same talent agents as actors and actresses. It's all part of one studio system machine now. And it's that sort of that holy ground, that sacred ground that used to be where the newsrooms were kept out of all of that, right? Yeah. It's not the case anymore. It's about monetizing that content for the advertisers and making sure that it's entertaining and it's produced in a tight manner. It's not, that is the priority. And everyone defers to the attorneys. And this is happening in print as well. And the attorneys are now in there on behalf of the corporate ownerships determining whether people want to believe what I'm saying or not. It is happening. You can talk to
I can tell you 100%. That's the way those newsrooms work. I've been there. That's what they do.
They can't get it past the corporate attorneys. So where attorneys and newsrooms used to be about, you guys do whatever you're going to do, and we will be there to fight and protect your right to do the stories that you feel that you have to do. We'll fight for you in the court because this is part of a constitutionally protected job and institution, right? The Fourth Estate. They now are in front of the stories. They're in front of everything, so that if you have someone like a Kellyanne Conway picking up the phone and screaming at the head of business affairs, screaming at the programmers, screaming at the head of the network, you can't do this, you can't play this, blah, 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 we're going to sue you, we're going to that makes everybody go, oh, right? They back off. And next thing you know, you're not getting the gun, the bullet, the body, the forensics, the confession,
because everyone keeps their jobs and they're makeup people. The interesting thing for me is that these licenses on which they broadcast, they don't own the channels. They license the channels from the people.
That's right.
People own the airwaves, all the local stations, all the local stations.
But does that even exist anymore? Because
the local stations are still the main stations, and then they have also the other cable stations next to them. That's a lot of money comes out of those local stations. People still watch those stations, and they're the main part of the networks. But all of those licenses are not they're not owned by the networks themselves or by the station owners. They're given to them by the people for doing the job that we're describing, giving us independent, smart, and responsible public news. So that's why they have these licenses. They're just breaking them. So I think there's a real argument, and I think we could do this at every market in the country, for people to start arguing, if they're not happy with their local stations, that their licenses should be taken away and returned to the people so they could give it to someone who's going to do a responsible job with the news.
And that's when a lot of people talk about bringing back the fairness doctrine. The fairness doctrine would not get rid of the cable news.
The fairness doctrine is about balance. It's this whole balance idea that you've got to include other people.
The fairness doctrine also made it so that if you were doing it, like, there has to be news on the radio every, twice in an hour, whatever, things like that.
It's about the content,
pucker, like actual news. So
one of the things that I think also they tried to do with that fairness doctrine was you couldn't own every station in the market. Now, one big entity can own like 5 stations in the market, or at least 3 of them.
Right.
And so you control a bunch of news in one station. You control everything. And that's not okay. You need variety of voices. You need other people to access those networks, and you need different points of view. Otherwise, you land up with no competition and you get just propaganda, which is what we're seeing.
Well, then take that back to Paul Manafort as well. What did we learn in his indictments outside of the Konstantin Kilimnik revelations? By the way, we still need all the underlying evidence of the Mueller report as well as the entire Mueller report unredacted. It needs to be unredacted. This is ridiculous.
Volume 5 too.
Volume 5 as well. But Paul Manafort, the old school craft of running influence ops outside, before the Facebook Cambridge Analytica and whatever becomes of that, right, has become of that, the Amardata, and it's gotten way more sophisticated than even clunky old Cambridge Analytica, right? But before all of that, before this sort of ability to target and define and refine and drill down into individual profiles and scraping data and all that, it was just, and Paul Manafort was still doing this in Ukraine, and he did it for Donald as well. It was picking up the phone and getting the New York Times or the Washington Post or Tucker Carlson to run with your version of a story that was written and crafted, especially for print, that was written and crafted by paid foreign agents of whatever state, right? So that one big way to actually bring some real integrity back into our news, and I've been saying this as well for years and years, is extend the FARA, right? Extend the Foreign Agent Registration Act to where if you are a news organization, let's say you're cable news, you're print news, and you're going to run in print, they'll run a piece paid for by Qatar, right? But you have to go read the whole thing, and then you get down the bottom of it. It says, this is from a blah, 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 blah. That needs to be right at the top. This person is a paid foreign agent. They are running a piece of propaganda on behalf of their client. That has to be above with the headline. And then when you go into cable news or even broadcast, if someone like Michael Caputo is showing up on screen to be an opinionist, right, that it needs to say right above him, right, or the chyron below, paid for an agent of Russia or whatever it is, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Twitter does it now. Google does it. Hold
the news, right? Hold the news organizations. If they knew that if they're going to put somebody on and not vet them, and that person is unregistered, right, or that they don't put that on there, that they actually suffer a violation under that act because they're profiting off of it. They're raising advertising money on it. They're getting circulation. They're getting subscription fees off of it. They're making money off that content that is paid for, crafted, and provided by often a hostile foreign power, maybe even someone who's on a sanction list. So if you're going to do that, news orgs, and you don't label it, I just want labels, like the cigarette packs. I'm not trying to infringe anyone's First Amendment. Just label this fucking shit so people
put it
know
all over prime time and Fox News.
Know what they're consuming, and then if they don't do that, they're going to be hit with these FAR violations. And if they do it in coordination and cooperation with hostile foreign actors or people on a sanction list, they're going to get slapped with a fucking RICO as well. You're now in a conspiracy to defraud. You're making money off of the fraud. That's easy. That's taking our existing laws and expanding it, and it doesn't infringe on anyone's First Amendment. We're just labeling.
I'm even okay with infringing on people's First Amendments if there are networks that are being run by foreign agents like Russia Today or Newsmax or whatever. Honestly, get rid of them. They do not need to be on the airwaves at all. But everyone else, if they're being paid for occasionally, then they should be absolutely they should say that. Can I just say one last thing before we go about the Kilimnik thing today? Because it really struck me that in order for this thing to be held in secret by the intelligence community and kept away from Trump for presumably the whole term. It must have been all 4 years that they were holding back a ton of information that they knew was going on. They couldn't tell him because he'd either lose it or he'll fire them. There was a whole structure created around intelligence and military and a bunch of places by Barack Obama in the last few weeks of his administration, which saved the republic. Because I really believe that what he did then, he did two things that were really important. He disseminated a ton of information, like more CIA files and more FBI files than you've ever seen, to as far away as places as he could, and distributed it so they couldn't be destroyed, but they could also be accessed by as many people as they needed. And then he created sort of a substructure which gained some of the authorities that he had that, where would have been considered like war powers in some of those, in some of earlier administrations. And he gave them to the secretaries of defense and their undersecretaries. And what that did is it took the power away from Donald Trump, and it also gave him very little access to the real information. So that he was able to put the White House, the Trump White House, in a bit of a cocoon, shielded away from what was really going on. And then under that, I think the intelligence community was doing a lot of work, and they've been sitting on that work for 4 years, or at least haven't been revealing it publicly. And I think that what we're seeing now with all the consternation on the networks of, when did you know? How did you know it? Well, they knew it all along. And what they did is they worked with it and they got it out to as many people as they could. But they were still running a counterintelligence operation underneath Trump without him knowing it. And I think that's all because of President Barack Obama. I really do. And he's brilliant thinking in the last few weeks of his administration. So today's up to him, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, I think you just described what got weaponized and called the deep state. But that's a compliment. They knew that this had happened, the Trump administration and his cronies, and they flailed about it. But there was nothing they could do. And then I think it's also speaks to the other side of it. There's plenty that could have been revealed. I was an advocate for it coming out. I've taken some big hits for that, but I stand by that because I was talking to people in the intelligence community who were, and there were people vocally, even John Brennan, they need to come out and say what they know. They need to come. You had all of these big leaders at the time throughout 2017, 2018, begging for a lot to become revealed because of how dangerous that president was. And we knew how dangerous. We knew there would be mass suffering. I don't think anybody could quite tell what it was going to show up as. And then now we have 500,000 Americans that were needlessly slaughtered by that intentionally failed pandemic response, of which someone needs to be held accountable. That's the cost of not surfacing information when it could have made a difference. And we don't really know what the war was behind the scenes and what a fight. We do know that I have no doubt that our intelligence community was under vicious attack by Trump and his people. Constant attack. His first day, it wasn't even his first full day in office. He went to the CIA, Wall of Stars, to holy ground, sacred ground, and he took a dump on it. He really did. He was there. They were calling him brown shirts. They were calling him Nazis. So I was an advocate, and I will never back off that position of I wish that information on Donald Trump, there's so much information on him personally, had been surfaced when it needed to be surfaced to stop this man, because he was absolutely going to slaughter people, and he absolutely did. But now, if it doesn't end up coming to the surface in the way that it needs to, so that we can have justice and these people can be held accountable, I don't know what's being protected. I don't understand what's being protected by all that secrecy.
Well, the one thing really on Obama, I think, once they were all anticipating Clinton was going to win. So they weren't needing to release any more information on Trump because they thought he was going to just, not succeed. I think when it became apparent that he was going to win for whatever reasons, obviously now we know Russian help was involved. That's what I'm talking about. His actions then were very, very important.
Amazing.
In terms of saving the republic. I agree with you that it would have been great to have a lot more information about Trump earlier on. Of course, that's a real failing that wasn't released.
Let's not look. He didn't go public with the Russia stuff with McConnell. He bowed to McConnell and didn't go public in July about Trump's involvement with Russia, which he fucking knew about. And he could have made Glenn Kirshner a special counsel the day after Thanksgiving 2016. Okay? And given him a super wide berth, unlimited budget, just go find all the criminals and put them away. And he didn't do that.
Well, he was
Instead, this secret bullshit. So I'm not so... great
knowing the anger in the community.
Let's not get carried away.
Yeah. I don't know. I
will Republic almost died because
he
fucked up the last year. And I will stand by that.
I do think, I think they had him in a bit of a straitjacket too because of whatever disinformation campaigns they were running. So it's not
the president. He was the president from November through January. He had 2 full months to do stuff. He did that great. He did not go far enough. And then he left and went windsurfing for 2 months in the South Pacific.
Well, I think he felt that he had secured some stuff. But what was the key person you just said in there? McConnell. McConnell knew. He knew.
They all knew.
They all knew, and they still installed that fucker. And then they protected him. They did. And he slaughtered 500,000 Americans. He slaughtered them. We've lost way more than 500,000. We've lost so many. But as even the doctor that Frau Birx admitted, right? Finally, that Frau, she admitted, right, that it's like the first 100,000, there's probably nothing we could have done, but everything after that was a preventable death. Well, and that's not even to mention the millions of people infected and what they have to deal with. My voice is never going back. That's a little tiny itty bitty thing, but I was fucking infected. It's not, it changed something for me. I don't know if it's going to, if I'm going to deal with this shit in other ways, right? I have no idea.
A lot of people are going to deal with it. I do.
Breaking the glass. We should have broken the glass on him during his presidency and open up the files and let all the secrets fly. What's the point? What were we supposed to be protecting? To have all this secrecy was about, at the end of the day, making sure that something as catastrophic to the Republic, like an asset of our enemy's intelligence services becoming president of the United States. I would think if there's ever a time to break the glass and say, bring everybody back from the field, we got to tell the American people what's going on here, that would have been the circumstance.
We just don't have a mechanism to get rid of the presidents other than impeachments. I mean, that's what we have. So, we need to either relook at that, which is going to be very controversial, but we don't have another way of doing it, as far as we know.
I don't know.
Yeah, but you're right. Hey, we should go.
We gotta go.
You gotta go. What a fun show! Interesting stuff. It's our Christmas edition in April because hey, it's been Christmas. It is nice to be proven right. I mean, even though it's been a while, it's good that we've proven right. I mean, that's a good thing. It's a good thing that we didn't. I'm trying to find a silver lining to this thing, but it is good news that whatever we were saying for 4 years.
The silver lining of the week is the sanctions that he hit Russia with.
Yeah.
That's the silver lining.
That's true. Although he's also making friends with them. He's what's this thing that he's doing this what did Clinton have, the reset button? I feel like we're reliving the reset button
we're not reliving the reset.
I hope we're not reliving the reset button because it's all this encroachment and friendliness on some issues, but not on these issues, but on that issues. I don't know, it makes me concerned a little bit, but we'll see. I have a lot of faith in this government.
Well, see, I think there's some really big stakes right now for Ukraine and for the region in other ways, in other places, and also for Navalny. And I think, and I'm giving this, right? I don't know. I just think this. I'm trying to be generous right now. I think there's a little bit of it's not reset, but it's definitely, okay, we're going to point to where we could work together to try to pull things back from this very hot moment.
Absolutely.
And not agitate this murderer, this mass murderer, right? To try to save some lives here and pull things back from the brink. We'll see.
Yeah, that's true. What a note to end tonight. Thanks very much, everybody. Have a great night. Narrative is funded by viewers like you. Support our independent journalism at patreon.com/narrative. Narrative is funded by viewers like you. Support our independent journalism at patreon.com/narrative.